Hello, hello. My name is Kim Ades. I'm the president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching and the co-founder of the Journal That Talks Back. You have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast, where we invite leaders from all over the world to come onto the podcast and get coached live and in person. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our guest. Her name is Susan Crooks, and she comes to us from a very, very interesting organization called Waltz. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about Waltz. Give us a little history, a little background. Tell us where you're at.
Okay, awesome. Well, in August 22nd of 2019, my son, after 20-year struggle with treatment-resistant anxiety, which eventually also led into depression, he died.
Can you go back and share with the audience, what does treatment resistant mean?
Yes. Well, what happened was, for him, the medications that he was prescribed, the treatments, for instance, there are some different treatments like magnetic resonance treatment, where there is like there's also electric shock. There are different therapies as well. So when I'm saying treatments, it also includes medications. He tried so many different medications, treatments, and even like ketamine and things that are newer, and they would not help. What happened was, we discovered that late in his life that he had a faulty fight or flight reflex, and so it's like a response in my family. So we have that anxiety. Out of eight of my brothers and sisters, so 9 of us children, 6 of us have really strong anxiety. And for him, with having this fight or flight not working correctly, the tiger kept coming, right? And so it was so many sleepless nights, so many medications not working. And it was if you saw a man just getting almost as if it was a cancer or something else, just kind of eating away at him. Although he continued to work all the time and no one knew it. I mean, on the outside, he looked so good and healthy. And, but on the inside, there was a lot of shame and exhaustion. And as treatment after treatment didn't help with this panic and anxiety that kept creeping, that just kind of haunted him. And he died. I was there 45 minutes before he died. So you can imagine how difficult this is, right? As soon as my son died, 2 days after he died, my son Will looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom," because he knew I might not make it, right? And he said,
your
"Mom."
other son.
Yes,
Will.
I have a son named Will. And they are 7 years apart, but they were best friends. And my boys took me everywhere, rock climbing, mountain biking, you name it. And he looked me in the eyes and knew and said, "Mom, we're going to start a movement. And if we save one life," and I always say Will spoke my language because I've been a teacher my whole life. In fact, my son, Walt, who died, he and I taught together for 10 years, and we were actually members of the oldest critical thinking think tank in the world. And we went around and did presentations on mindfulness and critical thinking, and we were getting ready to head to Hong Kong. I always say my son was Mensa. He was very smart. And I always say, well, I was just like the whimsical, "Hi, everybody," So we were a really good team, and he was really my best friend. And so when he died, we had decided that we needed to let people know how he died and how he suffered, because there's way too much suffering going on. As you know, every 40 seconds, a human being dies by suicide. This is just such a big deal. It's not, and also, okay, we think about the deaths, which are 800,000 a year approximately. But if we really think also about the suffering, people kind of discount that. We know the CDC says that 1 out of 5 people have a mental health condition at any given time. So I often say, like, look around the room, right? This is 1 out of 5 people, right? And that person, someone else is going to have a family member that has a mental health condition.
Yeah.
This is a large audience,
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to go kind of forward, but I don't want to go too fast. So can we back up for a minute? Because I'm
sorry.
very interested in part of your
Mhm.
story. So you mentioned a few things. The first thing you mentioned is that 6 out of 8 of your family members, in other words, your siblings, you have
6 out of 9
6 out of
children.
9.
Yes.
Okay, 9 have
Mhm.
anxiety. Are you
Mhm.
one of those?
Yes.
So how do you cope with your anxiety?
I actually used to, on and off, I'd exercise a lot. And then I also went on a medication. And I have been on and off of um, a few different medications throughout my life. And
Okay.
those things help me to a point. Um,
Okay, help you to a point, and then is there something else helps you to the next point, or what are you doing when it's only helping you to a point?
um, then I talk to people. I try to get it out of my system. Sometimes I'll have, for example, circular thinking, which would be normally for me, it would be, for example, I will be afraid I hurt somebody's feelings. And it may seem ridiculous, but I will circle that, oh my gosh, what if they took it this way? And it's always purely innocent. There's nothing there, but this is where logic and things don't play into it.
Is there
And
someone
so
in your life that kind of helps you move past that circular thinking?
it helps, but yeah, I have a sister that I call, and I came up with a plan and said I'm just going to call people and let them know. And usually they don't know what I'm talking about, and they'll go, "What are you talking about?" And I'll say, "Oh, I don't know. I was just worried that maybe I hurt your feelings or something." And they will actually they'll reassure me. That helps some as far as that goes. But there are just times where it's hard, right? And there are levels of anxiety, and that's something that we try to teach people as well, because some people's anxiety is more situational,
Yeah.
and so that's one of our things that we do as well. But if we want to go back just even to our nonprofit and how we really got started, something that's kind of curious or interesting is that when we started our nonprofit, it was right away. Like, we became a business, a corporation, because that's your first step within 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks of my son's death, because I didn't know what else to do, right?
Right.
And we were fortunate that the USC Law Clinic and Clemson University and the Small Business Alliance there and Furman University have been big helps for us throughout this time. So we
But
became a nonprofit
yeah,
very quickly.
I want to talk about that in a minute, but I still want to go back because I think mental health is a very, very important subject. And I think
Mhm.
our audience deserves to hear your story
Absolutely.
thoroughly. And I think that this is not a subject that we need to skim over. We kind of need to dig in a little bit. We need to shed some light. It's very, very important. We as a company feel very strongly that people need support. We have created a program for young professionals ourselves. Now, we're not dealing with people who are suicidal. We're not dealing with people who need the support of a doctor. But we know that a lot of young people experience anxiety, depression, overwhelm, all of those feelings, stress, of course, and at at a at a broad level, we're here to support them. But I think that what we're talking about is something a little bit more severe, more that needs a little bit more attention than that. Something that really requires perhaps medication, perhaps the help of a therapist, that perhaps some kind of extended treatment. So I want to just kind of go back. You knew your son was struggling with anxiety, and you were watching him struggle.
Yes, and we couldn't get help. And this is one of the things that I think people don't completely understand. And that's part of our mental health moonshot, because people sometimes think that they forget that there's genetics involved. And
Yeah.
it can be somewhat complicated and people might not understand it, but it's as simple as heredity, right? And we understand the science as far as the idea that if you're somebody who has anxiety, There are parts, your genes, there are specific changes, differences in your genes and someone else that you're literally born with. So sometimes it can be very difficult for people to hear. My son kept a gratitude journal for 10 years. He did mindfulness. He became a yoga instructor, didn't just do that, okay? He exercised every day. He did a 10-day fast. He had an entire bookshelf full of self-help books, okay? He lifted weights. He was extremely handsome and brilliant, all right? He had all these things that you would think, my God, this man can do anything. But
Right.
inside, he had shame. He also felt anxious. And when the day he died, he said, Mom, sometimes people just don't get better. And this is what we're trying to promote, because also, as you had said, that you don't work with people this way or whatever, but you don't know how their level, and that's what we have to make people
Well, this
aware
is
of,
the
in a
thing.
sense.
Yes. So our job is to, if we flag it, if we identify it, if something comes up that is even mildly suggestive of self-harm, we bring it forward and we hand it over to people who can handle it. But so I just want to go back, because I think this is very important. Your son is struggling. Did you know that he was ready to take his life 45 minutes after you saw him?
No, but the thing was, there were signs that he was struggling, and he had been struggling forever. He had told me throughout the years, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. We went to neurologists. He had a psychiatrist. He had he had all these things. He did every single thing. My son wanted to live, but we found no help. And what people don't want to admit is that we are not there in the sciences. We're not there in genetics. We haven't had a mental health moonshot. Cancer, yes, started with the war on cancer 50 years ago, but we have not given the funding, if you would see it, from the National Institute of Health for research.
Yeah.
Is barely there. What we have is reactive. Most things are reactive, right? Yeah. All right, it's a triage. We're going to put a Band-Aid on. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But we are looking at the genetics and also being able to really target if someone needs a specific medication. Yeah. We have them fill out a form and look at it that day. And then the doctor may even say, well, what's your family on? Or does somebody else in your family have this? But they're not looking at specific biomarkers. And this is something that we are different at Waltz. So we are trying to say that what's it going to take for us to kind of start marching on Washington and say, enough is enough. My son's life mattered. We begged for help. We saw a neurologist. It was like, here's your hat. What's your hurry? He had bags of different medications. And what people have to understand as well is that you're put on a medication, you're on it for approximately 6 weeks. They really try to keep you on it for 6 weeks. And then you have to get off of it. Yep. Now they prescribe a new one, and then you have to go on it. And I just had an interview with Dr. Nicolescu, because we're doing interview series with scientists and geneticists and people to actually understand these things more as well, along with, sure, mindfulness, coach, all these types of things are great. But just like, say, for instance, Kim, you have anxiety and I have anxiety, all right? Oh, wow, now we've understood each other, right? Oh, no, we haven't. Because we think we know what that means through our own perspective and our own vision, but we don't, right? So what we think about is, one of our things we promote is we say, take your mental health temperature. And on our website, we have that where people can click on a screening. And even though it's not diagnostic, and we always stress this, it is not diagnostic, but it will give a picture of where you're at. Say, for example, I'm worried about somebody and I want to even check on them, right? And I'll say, hey, I saw this. How about taking this diagnostic screening? And the screening takes you to Mental Health America's screening, which is one of the most widely used screenings. And say, for example, there's for anxiety, there are 4 levels. Okay. So say that you have situational anxiety, and for instance, which of course it's not, that when you talk with people, you get anxious, when you're on the film or whatever, right?
Right.
And that is when you have anxiety. For me, say for instance, my anxiety is almost every single day. I'm verging from a 3 to a 4, and there's a set of questions that you can go to. Well, this should be an alert to me that, oh, I'm really struggling here.
Right.
Or my friend is struggling, because people are afraid to bring it up too, right? We
Yeah,
don't
of
talk
course.
about
Yeah.
it. And
Okay.
this not without having any kind of
Okay.
understanding of these things.
So
It
Walt is
creates
Waltz
silence.
is in honor of your son, and you're here to shed a light on mental health issues and help and really get people the help that they're truly needing. And that help is individualized for each person.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're here now. You've had this, you know, tragedy in your life. You've been trying to deal with it by mobilizing yourself into action. What is your greatest challenge right now? Is it personal or professional?
It's professional, I would say, to a point. I haven't run a nonprofit. I've been an educator my entire life. I haven't just a little businesses here and there and things, but I've not been running a nonprofit. And one of the challenges that we face is even just getting people to be comfortable enough normalizing this conversation, so that we can even talk about it further. What a challenge for us, like as far as professionally, is um, how do we get this information out to people? For example, the genetics, like our mental health moonshot. We know we need constituents to be aware of what's going on and make demands, because there aren't changes to the National Institute of Health and things. These are all political things that happen. And without constituents making demands, we're not going to see certain changes that we feel we need.
Yeah. So I'm a Canadian. Politics
Mhm.
work a little bit differently here in Canada, but I
Mhm.
will say this: one of the things I do know is that um, politics are highly driven by the business community, right?
Mhm.
So businesses
That's true as
support,
well. Exactly. Mhm.
right? Businesses support politicians, and so there's a direct kind of tie between all of these pieces, which is the business community and political movements,
Mhm.
political change, right? So money talks.
Right.
And so it's interesting because you're trying to go directly to the constituents. And perhaps what you need to consider is, who are the political influencers in the world who care about mental health?
That's a really good point. One of the things that we were trying to do, as far as trying to get businesses on board, is we create these stigma-free zones. We're trying to show that we know that right now it's hard to hire young. The young people are coming and going. We feel like this is a perk to show that they
Yes,
actually.
exactly. There
And
are
so we
industry.
are doing that, but it's like the idea and the power to actually even make the connections that we need to. Trying to get to talk to the powerful people isn't always so easy as well,
Right.
right?
Yes. And sometimes what we need to do is kind of just knock on one door at a time and ask for that person to introduce us to the next person. I kind of
Mhm.
call it leapfrogging. But you might start with organizations or associations that have wide bodies of young people who are part of those industries, like retail, hospitality, that kind of thing. And partner with the associations, because associations have link to government and link to uh, substantially sized businesses as well. And so what you're really trying to
Mhm.
do is go in through the association door. But in your case, like, identify people who have some exposure who may have taken their lives. Perhaps Kate Spade, for example. She
Exactly, but
she
mhm,
you're right. So she
mhm.
comes from a massively sized company, and this matters to them. This matters to them as an organization at a very, very personal level, and they have dollars to back it up. So it's kind of finding those entry points where there's an alignment and they care about mental health. And if they don't care about mental health, it represents a huge weakness or a huge vulnerability in their workforce.
we do understand that. It's just that it's difficult to, we have tried these things. It's just difficult to get anybody to get back with you because I am Susan Crooks, a person that I lost my son, but I am not a wealthy person. I am a teacher. I am impassioned, though. I mean, so that is
But
the
hold on
thing.
a second. Let me kind of back up a second,
Mhm.
back you up. Okay. So I am Susan Crooks. I'm just going to repeat what you just said. I'm Susan Crooks. I'm not a wealthy person. I don't have any experience in fundraising. I'm a teacher. What you're doing is you're saying, you just in your words saying, I'm not a big player,
Exactly.
right? And in your description of not being a big player, what did you just do? Did you step
Yeah,
up to the plate?
of course, you no, exactly not.
Right.
And it's exactly what I tell our people not to do because, in fact, we just had a conversation with someone who said, "Oh, you need $1 million to do this or that." And I'm like, have you seen everything that we've done? I mean, we have international Waltz Stigma-Free zones. I mean, we actually have, we've trained hundreds and hundreds of people in things that, you have to compare what we've done with 0 employees. I mean, and
Exactly.
so, that's what I try to say, because what happens with me is when someone tells me I can't do it, it's my within myself to say that I can. I think that it's just sometimes when I get discouraged thinking, how do I make myself stand out to get someone to even read a letter or look at us?
I'm gonna
Because,
I'm gonna change your thinking for a minute. And it's something that I learned not too long ago. It's not the question of how, it's the question of who that you need to ask yourself. So who is the person that can help me open doors? Who is the person? Who is the person? Who are the people? The who's. And so, I remember um, years ago, my dad used to say, if you can't get in through the door, climb in through the window. Right. And really what it means is identify the individuals, the people that care about this. And, your passion is there, you care about it, but it's not about how am I going to do it? I'll find a way. It's not about, right? It's about who is the person that's going to make that massive difference for you? Who cares right alongside with you?
I think that it's still difficult to get them to respond to you because they get so many, it's like, how do you get them to hear you? Like, for instance, we are going to be in the documentary, which with Will Harper, who produced Oprah. He had this first documentary was Highly Sensitive with Alanis Morissette, and I was interviewed, and we're in the one which is the Genius of Sensitivity. It's about masculinity and um, how we need to address that. So,
How did you get into that movie? How did they hear about you?
um, the way that it worked is I actually had a couple different ways. I had one of my friends from the Foundation for Critical Thinking. He's brilliant. As I said, these people are brilliant. And we were part of the close knit group of the very people in the top. And he actually is in the movie. He is co-directing it or co-producing it. Yeah. And so he knew about me. And also I had reached out to um, his wife, who had actually did produced was the producer on Highly Sensitive. Um, and so those were the things I did for
So
that.
hold
Yeah.
on a second. So you knew someone who was creating this movie. He knew you, so he invited you to be in the movie. And while you were there, you asked for an introduction to the next person.
No, well, actually, no. Actually, I had met her as well. It was separate. It was just weird. It was a weird coincidence.
Okay. But
It
are you
wasn't
asking
really.
for introductions to the next person?
No, I'm not from there because I always feel I would say one of my weaknesses is that I don't like to ask people for things. I feel uncomfortable, but then what I keep telling myself is I'm not asking for money for myself. I'm not doing anything like that. What I'm trying to do is I always say I'm trying to say it help save people and reduce suffering, and that's really what we're trying to do, reduce suffering, because we
Yep.
know how many people are cowering when they get home from work, how many people
Yep.
are exhausted, and so I understand my mission is is correct, and I feel very strongly about it, and I am not benefiting any financially from any of
No,
this,
I
but
understand all of
I
that.
guess I just keep
Yeah.
questioning it.
Well, so that's exactly it, right? So you
Hmm.
question it because you feel uncomfortable about, knocking on doors and asking for help. But I would say to you that exactly that, ask for help. I'm looking for some help. I'm hoping you can help me. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure out who the next, kind of like how to open these doors. I'm a little lost. I could use your help. And so it's not, I need your
Hmm.
money. I could use your help.
Right.
I'm trying to figure something
I
out.
I asked, yeah, we're members of the chamber, and we go every month to the different functions or twice a month. And I did the ask again. I put out the ask to 70 people that we just need help. That's what we put out as well. We say we're looking for donations of time, even a couple hours if you could give us to help us figure out.
So
But we just aren't getting much response, is my
So
point.
I'll tell you, we just launched something new, and I mentioned it earlier, right? It's the Journal That Talks Back,
Hmm.
and it's a whole new market for us. It's a whole new business in a way for us, and we're trying to figure it out. We don't have all the answers,
Right.
but what we do is we reach out to people saying, "Hey, I'm interested in figuring out how to, for example, um, get sponsorship. I don't know anything about sponsorship. I've never gotten sponsorship, and I'd love for some advice. Would you be willing to spend a few minutes on the phone with us? Here's what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
Here's our mission." And looking for some help in, understanding what is the right approach to get into this area, to get to the ears of sponsors. You have no idea how many people are willing to spend time with you. But if you talk to them and you build a relationship, what happens? They introduce you to the next person and the next person, and that door opens and that door opens, and they say, wow, this is completely aligned with our mission. But
Mhm.
it's asking for help for something specific as opposed to asking for donation dollars. And you
Right.
might say, I'm looking, here's my mission, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to figure out what is
Yeah,
the
that
best move.
I actually say that to a point as well. But maybe I possibly need to start calling directly businesses and asking for, more like getting a hold of them. Like I say it out loud to this group of people that if you even have, I say, if you have any time at all, like I am,
But you need to
we
say
are needing help in
specifically
this.
what you're, because help is very broad,
Well,
right?
yeah, I actually list it, like
Yeah.
even like on LinkedIn. Like we're looking for help in this, and this area.
And
But
you need to be as specific as possible. So if you see that there's
okay.
someone on LinkedIn who specializes in sponsorships, so you say, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to position
That's a good
this,
point.
right? And
Hmm.
I'd love to get your feedback on our deck, on our
Yes.
proposal. I'd love to
Hmm.
get your insight." And then when you get their insight, you say, "Do you know anyone I should be talking to?" And then you go to the next person, and you just keep
Yeah, that
going.
was how we grew our non. That was how we got our funding to actually start our 501(c)(3). Was that I just kept calling people until I found people who would help us. Like I didn't know there was a law clinic that we could get a
Exactly.
501(c) for three. So I did all of that in the beginning, and then it's like I've sort of like been running on this wheel as we are doing so much, and then just working, as full time, two full time jobs, and wearing myself out to a point and not being efficient,
I
right?
understand.
As I should be, and also, um, you know, not like one of the things that we're doing poorly is advertising and actually keeping strong data. I mean, we have the data, we just need to actually pull it together. And so we can show people exactly what we have accomplished in such a little bit of time, with actually no paid employees and
Yeah.
really no funding. And so people tell me you're way past what you need to be doing, to actually get people to help you and see you. And we are being seen and heard. Don't get me wrong. Like, we have we had a lot that's happened. It's just that it's almost like now we're ready for the next step, because we figured things out. We were able to have certain companies and nonprofits be stigma-free zones and things like that, so that we could work through it. They're like, we'll be your guinea pig, and they're so nice. So we're like, okay, let's figure out this. What would not work with HR? What would work? What looks good? What would a company want? So we feel like we've gotten there, but we still, like, I think I feel overwhelmed.
there are two thoughts that I have for you. Number one is that every single hospital has a fundraising department, and they have an individual in that fundraising department who is in charge of fundraising campaigns. And it's not that they will help you raise funds, but they will help you examine your plea and help you say, hey, like, if you position it like this, or if you angle it like that, that might be useful. So find the people in the hospitals who are willing to give you their time to review your positioning and your plea. So that's thought number one. Thought number two, and I think this is very important for everyone who's listening, is success leaves clues, and sometimes we ignore the clues. And so when you look at your history, there are some things that worked. It's only been 2 years, and you've done an amazing amount of work in a 2-year period, 2.5 years. That's not a lot of time. And so you've done some things in the past that have opened doors. You've done some things in the past that have helped you make progress. And then we ignore those things that we've done that worked and said, well, okay, what's the next thing? And it's very important to keep track of our successes. Because if we're doing something that works, we want to really, really get good at that thing that works and keep doing that, only better and better and better and better. So for you, if it's knocking on doors and simply saying, I need help specifically here, do that.
That's a really good point, because I was thinking, well, we've kept track of all of our successes and everything we've done, but we really haven't kept track of how did we do it, right?
Exactly.
And some of it was just the idea we got a lot of media. We've gotten a lot of media, which has been really good for us. And that's helped us. But I think that sometimes I become a bit anxious, thinking that we are right here, we're growing, we are like getting big, and now I need help in the next phase, because we're climbing the steps, and we are ready for this next revamp.
And maybe your request is, hey, I want to be doing this full time, and I need to be supported in doing that. And so I'm raising funds so I can commit all of my time to this. And that's okay. That's a feasible request. It's okay to request a salary.
Yeah, I know. I was like, why do I have to make hardly anything? We've talked about it, actually, just even because I'm used to not having, whatever. And it's difficult, because I'm teaching full time and running Walt full time, and I get up at like 3:50 this morning and start and work till, like, say I have a meetings till 7, and then I just go to bed.
Right. Well, and you need to take care of yourself. Yeah. So I hope that this conversation kind of gave you some ideas, but really the idea is examine what's working and keep doing that.
Yeah, that's
because you've had a lot of success. Things have worked for you. Even if you've had success in gaining media attention, there was a way that you did that. And so think about that and say, how do we apply the wins over here to over there?
Yeah, I really like your ideas of, like, connections on LinkedIn, as far as asking for help that way, and also just the business communities. What would your thoughts be, super quick, about just even reaching out to people, like, across the United States as well, and things like that? We've seen.
I think you should be business focused. Of course, across the United States, Don't stay
Yeah,
local.
because I mean, we have stigma-free zones across the United States, and I have done some things that way, but not been as much seeking help in a sense that way as much, So I do need to do that. That sounds good.
Yeah. All right. I hope that was helpful. Thank
Hey,
you.
it was. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your challenge, and thank you for sharing your story. I think that it wasn't an easy story to share, and I'm glad that you did share it with us and gave us an opportunity to hear some of your experiences and the experiences of your son as well.
Yeah, and he's a beautiful human being. I just wanted to add that, his nicknames were the Renaissance Man, St. Francis, and the Gentle Giant. So he was a beautiful human being, and we're losing way too many people, and too many people are suffering, and,
Yep.
and we need to get people out there and, really like coming forward and saying, we need change. It's so past time.
Absolutely. If people want to support you, if people want to make a donation, how do they find you?
We have a website. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We're at waltz.com, just WALTZ.com. And we have volunteer opportunities, and we're actually doing a film series if there's any geneticists listening, or scientists or doctors. We actually are doing another series as well. So
amazing. You're doing incredible work. Please reach out to Susan, and please look up Waltz, 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 or Z for the Americans. For those of you who are listening, thank you for tuning in. This is an important subject. Mental health is something we really, really need to take seriously. We need to look around and see, how are people feeling? We need to check in, tune in, and see if there's anything that we could do to support the people around us, and not just keep our eyes and ears closed, but let's keep them open and let's tune in with one another. Again, if you're listening and if there's a challenge that you have that you want to share on this podcast, please reach out. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. If there's a challenge that you want to share, but not so comfortable sharing it on the podcast, please reach out as well. We'll have a one-on-one conversation, not on the podcast. My email again is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. Thank you guys for listening. We would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Please send them our way. In the meantime, have a great week.